our illusions are already beginning to shatter, replaced by cynicism and disgust, the seductiveness of moral disgust with those lesser peoples who fail to see our goodness and beneficence. As William Butler Yeats wrote in Meditation in Times of Civil War, we had fed the heart on fantasies, the heart's grown brutal from the fair. This is a war of liberation, but it is a war of liberation by Iraqis from American occupation. And if you watch closely, you can see it through the abysmal coverage, the lashing out at the terrorist death squads, and the murder of Shiite leaders in mosques. You can see this resistance taking shape. We will pay for this. We will pay for every bomb we dropped on Iraq. But what saddens me is that those who will, by and large, pay the highest price are poor kids from Mississippi or Alabama or Texas who could not get a decent job or health insurance and joined the Army because it was all we as a society offered them. They have been sent off to fight by men such as Dick Cheney, the same Dick Cheney who, when asked why he did not serve in Vietnam, answered, "I had other priorities." For war is always about betrayal, betrayal of the young by the old, of soldiers by politicians, of idealists by cynics. Read Antigone, where the king imposes his will without listening to those he rules, or read Thucydides. Read how Athens' expanding empire saw it first become a tyrant abroad and then become a tyrant at home. How the tyranny of the Athenian leadership imposed on others, it finally imposed on itself. This, Thucydides wrote, is what destroyed Athenian democracy. Athens destroyed itself. For the instrument of empire is war, and war is a poison. War is a poison that at times we must ingest, just as a cancer patient must ingest a poison to survive. But if we do not understand the poison of war, if we do not know how deadly that poison is, it can kill us just as surely as the disease. We flirt, given the potency of modern industrial weapons, with our own destruction. We do so not for the vaunted war on terror, but for America's right to control the world's resources, for what a senior administration official told the New York Times were, quote, the spoils of war. If this was a war on terror, we would have been attacking North Korea, a nation that has at least 2 or 3 nuclear weapons, 5,000 tons of poison gas and germs, plus the missiles and artillery to deliver them to Seoul, the 37,000 U.S. troops in South Korea, all of Japan, and U.S. bases in Okinawa and Guam. But we do not attack North Korea. We attempt to buy them off with $4 billion in oil, food, and nuclear reactors. We plead, we cajole. We turn our backs on a problem that, like Al-Qaeda, is a far more serious and real crisis. We turn our back for the establishment of empire. The seduction of war is insidious because so much of what we are told about war is true. It does create a feeling of comradeship, which obliterates our alienation and makes us, for perhaps the only time in our life, feel that we belong. War allows us to rise above our small stations in life. We find nobility in a cause and feelings of selflessness, even bliss. At a time of soaring deficits and financial scandals and the very deterioration of our domestic fabric, war is a fine diversion. War for those who enter into combat has a dark beauty, filled with the monstrous and the grotesque. The Bible calls it the lust of the eye and warns believers against it. War gives us a distorted sense of self. It gives us meaning. Once in war, the conflict obliterates the past and the future. All is one heady, intoxicating present. You feel every heartbeat in war. Colors are brighter. Your mind races ahead of itself. You are aware in ways you never were before. War is Zen. They do tell you this, and this is not a lie. Moreover, war allows you to engage in lusts and passions you kept hidden in the deepest, most private interiors of your fantasy life. It allows you to destroy not only things but human beings. In that moment of wholesale destruction, you feel the power of the divine, the power to revoke another person's charter to live on this earth. The frenzy of this destruction, and when unit discipline breaks down, or there was no unit discipline to begin with, frenzy is the right word, sees armed bands become consumed and crazed by the poisonous elixir that our power to bring about the obliteration of others always brings. All things, including human beings, become objects to either gratify or destroy or both. Almost no one is immune. The contagion of the crowd sees to that. Force, Simonville writes, is as pitiless to the man who possesses it, or thinks he does, as it is to its victims. The second it crushes, the first it intoxicates. Once we are in the middle of conflict, the shallowness of much of our lives becomes apparent. The emptiness of a society that seeks fulfillment in the acquisition of things and wealth and power pushes us to peer into our hollowness. Trivia dominates our conversations and increasingly our airwaves. The purpose of war is enticing. It gives us a resolve, a cause. It allows us to be noble. Those who have the least meanings in their lives, the impoverished Palestinian refugees in Gaza, the disenfranchised North African immigrants in France, even the legions of youth in the splendid indolence and safety of the industrialized world are all susceptible to war's appeal. I do not miss war, but I miss what it brought. I could never say I was happy in the midst of the fighting in El Salvador or Bosnia or Kosovo, but I had a sense of purpose. And this is a quality war shares with love, for we are also able to choose fealty and self-sacrifice over security for those we love. This is why war, at its inception, always looks and feels like love, the chief emotion war destroys. We are tempted, maybe even encouraged, to reduce life to a simple search for happiness. Happiness, however, withers if there is no meaning. The other temptation is to disavow the search for happiness in order to be faithful to that which provides meaning. But to live only for meaning, indifferent to all happiness, makes us fanatic, self-righteous, and cold. It leaves us cut off from our own humanity and the humanity of others. The ancient Greeks understood the perverse attraction between love and death in wartime. When Achilles kills Penthesilea, the queen of the Amazons in the Trojan War, he falls in love with her as she expires on the battlefield. He murders love, and once he murders love, he dooms himself. He courts death. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, had an illicit affair with Ares, the god of war, who was hated by nearly all of the other gods, with the exception of the god of the underworld, to whom he steadily brought new souls. We feel in wartime a sense of comradeship, and we confuse this with friendship, with love. There are those who will insist that the comradeship of war is love, the ecstatic glow that makes us in war feel as one people, one entity is real. But this is part of war's intoxication. Think back on the days after the attacks of 9/11. Suddenly, especially for those of us in New York, we no longer felt alone. We connected with strangers, even with people we did not like. We felt that we belonged, that we were somehow wrapped in the embrace of the nation, the community. In short, we no longer felt alienated. As this feeling dissipated in the weeks after the attack, there was a kind of nostalgia for its warm glow. Wartime always brings with it this comradeship, which is the opposite of friendship. Friends, as J. Glenn Gray points out in his book, The Warriors, Reflections on Men in Battle, are predetermined. Friendship takes place between men and women who possess an intellectual and emotional affinity for each other. Many of us will admit that we never really had a friend, and even the most fortunate of us have very few. But comradeship, that ecstatic bliss that comes with belonging to the crowd in wartime.